Hi, everybody. I'm Inga Cotton. I'm the founder and executive director of San Antonio Charter Moms, and we're doing another Charter Moms chat. It's Today is Wednesday, April 15th. I'm checking the bar on my computer because the days seem kind of similar, but I know Wednesdays are a day that we go on walks. So we have kind of a Monday, Wednesday, Friday schedule for walks. So I'm looking forward to that later today. We also have a grocery delivery, or actually grocery pickup later today. So this is the ways we mark our milestones these days. Um, the topic I wanted to talk about today is siblings. So I have two kids. I have my son Nicholas is 12 and my daughter Annika is 10, and I've seen discussions in the group about um, how it's different when you're doing school at home with one kid versus having multiple kids. How it's different when you have like kids who are school age versus younger kids who don't have school yet, and maybe they want to do school like the big siblings. Um, so I can see your comments here on the bar. So if you have thoughts or questions or things about siblings that you want to share, let me know. But I'll kind of what I want to do is kind of share my perspective, kind of what works in our family, and then ideas of things I've seen people in the group post about, and maybe it'll help you as you kind of navigate. If you have more than one kid, or if you have like one kid at home, and then maybe they need support to reach out to their friends and connect with their classmates online. Um, so if you're not already a member, please join the San Antonio Charter Moms discussion group on Facebook, because that's where it's moms helping other moms, and dads too, grandparents. As we it's a chance to share what we're experiencing as we're educating our kids from home while campuses are closed, and to share resources. So things you can find online, ways to problem solve, also ways to help our community. So like yesterday, I interviewed Christina Noriega from the SASD Foundation, and she was talking about their Connect campaign to raise money to get hotspots. So the district is distributing devices to tens of thousands of students, but not all of them have internet access at home. So that's getting the hotspots and connecting the hotspots with a subscription. That's what the SASD Foundation is working on. So that's what we were talking about yesterday. That's kind of our how we're trying to give back to the community. So today I wanted to talk about siblings. So as any parent knows, like just because your kids share DNA with you and with each other, that doesn't mean that they're necessarily alike. So I guess some of the key differences between my kids. I mean, I'm thankful that they're older and they already have some pretty good school habits built up, and there's a sense of continuity because they're working with the same teachers that they had when they were on campus, and they're sort of familiar with those subjects, and like what the teaching styles are from those teachers. So I would say like my daughter gets really excited about the let's see, what's the term? The term is synchronous learning, right? So that's when they all get to log into like Zoom or Microsoft Teams, or whatever your school uses. Um, yeah, for my daughter, it's a Zoom call at 1 o'clock, and she gets to pick like which teacher. So what they've done is they've kind of specialized by subject matter. So like one teacher is taking on literature, another one is doing like the writing and grammar. Then there's a one is specializing in math, another is history and science, and then the specials teachers like the art, music, Spanish, PE, they cover all the elementary grades. Um, but she gets to pick like which teacher she delves in, and I know it's something she enjoys. She looks forward to. My son feels more shy about um, logging into the. I guess it's more okay. So for the big kids at their school, they get Zoom like office hours where they get to access that teacher and ask questions. Um, but kind of puts more initiative on the student to like have a question in mind of what they want to ask. Um, and they're supposed to wear their school uniform shirt, so that's something we're still negotiating about. But I understand why. It's to that's the purpose of the uniform, is to be kind of an equalizer and also to signal, like, we're in school mode. Um, it's harder to maintain a sense of what is school mode, when you're doing school at home. I'd say for us, like, scheduling helps, but, um, geographically, I mean, it's like, this is like, we're in my dining room right now, and so this is like my workspace. My daughter works here, or she'll go, on the couch to read sometimes. My son likes to work at the desk in his room, or sometimes he'll lie down in his bed to read. Um, and then my husband has a home office, so that's where he's at most of the day. Um, but yeah, every family has to make it work. I guess, so that's those are some thoughts about, like for us with siblings. Um, I guess because my kids are able to work fairly independently, um, then it's not. I think a challenge that some families are facing, is when multiple kids, especially younger kids, need help going through the assignments more step by step. Um, and if they both get stuck at the same time, or they both need help at the same time, kind of how do you balance that? I mean, that's come up a little bit. Or I guess we sometimes we have traffic jams at the printer, right? Everyone's trying to print at once. Um, but I'd be interested to know how families with young children are solving that. Some of the approaches I've seen people post about are, kind of like splitting it up with your spouse. Like maybe, um, like one spouse will work with two of the kids while the other spouse works with the other two. Or trying to spread it out over the day. I think from what I've it really varies by school, but, um, from what I've seen, it seems like the teachers are designing the work, not to take up the same amount of time as what the children would have spent in a school day. And I mean, I think that's part of what we're all learning. If you, I mean, I've homeschooled before, so I knew this, but like, out of a regular school day, it's not just hour after hour of instruction time. There's instruction time built in, but there's also just transition time and kind of blowing off steam time, and there's meals, bathroom breaks, recess. um, it's not all instruction time, when they're at school. And so I think sometimes people who are new at homeschooling, and they're like, okay, we did math, literature, today was science, and we're done, and it's lunchtime. Like, what, did I do something wrong? It's like, no, if you concentrate the instruction time and you're able to personalize the instruction level to that child. You're not spending time talking about things they don't understand. You're not spending time reviewing things they already know. Home instruction can actually be very condensed. And I think more parents are realizing that um, how they thought time worked in education was it's not the same. So what how does that apply to distance learning? So it seems like, I think that the teachers and the schools realize that, as parents, we're juggling a lot of things. Like, we're still working. I'm able to work from home, and I have some flexibility. So, like, I have my day built with, kind of a chunk of, like, I have time to set up my kids with their projects, help them get started, and then I check in with my assistant. Hi, Laura. And then I have a little more time to check in with them. I kind of prep for these calls. While I'm doing the video calls, my kids, that's recess, so they're playing outside. Although it's a little chilly this morning, but they've got their hoodies on. They're good. It's not bad weather. It's just the wrong clothes, right? Although really, it's going to be a beautiful day. These are really precious days in Texas when it's spring and it's not too hot yet, and just I really treasure the weather when it's like this. Which is why, like I said, we're going on a walk this afternoon. Oh, Tracy says hi. Hi, Tracy. So, yeah, Tracy is an experienced homeschooler, and I know she and I have talked about how distance learning is different from homeschooling. Right? When you homeschool, you pick your curriculum, and you're working with the materials you chose. And when you're doing distance learning, you're having to work with what the school chose. And um, I'm grateful for the expertise and the planning that goes into, the school choosing the instruction. And they know the teaks, they know, what the progression is. But it's different because if you're tailoring it to your child, um, right? I mean, I mentioned, like, we're doing a family book club, right? And I was able to pick a science fiction book. So that's pop culture. That's not part of the Great Hearts canon. But my son is highly engaged with this book that we're reading, and um, he's really stretching himself. Like, in fact, he even led. We're taking turns kind of being the Socratic discussion leader. I know this is very nerdy, but yes, we are taking turns being the Socratic discussion leader. My daughter loves being the discussion leader. My son is a little shy about it, but he really he kind of warmed up to it, and I'm seeing like levels of reading comprehension that are very encouraging. So if you can build up those reading and writing skills with someone on one time and be creative about the project. Oh, Tracy says things are going better. We found our swing. Tracy, that is really good to hear. That is really good to hear. I'm so glad. Um, and that actually that goes back to, gosh, I think my one of my chats back in March, I think it's titled deschooling, right? Of where there's a process of kind of unlearning the habits that you had about the school day and the kind of the structure you were expecting, and then finding new structure. So, well, Tracy, once I finish the chat, I'm going to message you and find out more about what how things are getting in the swing, because I'm really glad to hear that. Yeah, I know Tracy has multiple boys, so if she has any more thoughts about siblings and how this works, um, I'm trying to think of like from the comments I've seen from folks who have very young children, because the okay, so I think some of y'all have actually done the school outside. I don't. It may depend on, but I see a lot of like sitting on the porch or sitting in the backyard, and so sometimes a change of setting like that, or like maybe the older child can sit at the you know at the table on the back porch and work, while the younger siblings are playing in the sandbox or playing in the dirt, and you can still have family togetherness, but trying to find things that are they're age appropriate, right? Sometimes young siblings want to do school even though they're not school age yet, and maybe they're not at daycare, they're not at preschool. But you can give them a crayon and a pencil, or a crayon and construction paper, and they can draw and kind of pretend they're writing. Modeling on older siblings is such a force for good in families. Well, it usually is, but but like having older siblings to look up to, and seeing what they do, wanting to be like the big kids. Um, Let's see. Okay, Tracy says they asked not to use Google Classroom and stay with the paper packets. Yeah, that makes. I appreciate that. Our school, Tracy and our kids are in the same charter district, and um, they are giving us flexibility about how much of the Zoom and the Google Classroom we adopt. So if it works better for your family to stay with the paper packets, then yeah, I'm seeing that it's a little different for each teacher, like how they're using Google Classroom, and how much stuff the kids like kind of print and write on versus how much they can like type in and PDF and submit, or how much is through like interactive, like um, it's amazing. Like Google Classroom, it's basically like this overlay on top of. So if you've used Google like Forms, if you use Google Drive, it's the same kind of tools. It's just has this overlay of the being set up by class, and it's actually really cool. For I mean, I'm kind of geeking out on it. I was kind of intimidated by it, but I'm kind of warming up to it, and it makes me wonder, maybe someday I might set up a Google class of um, like how to find a school for your kid or something. Maybe I'll use Google Classroom to teach a class to parents or something. I don't know. We'll see. I do like playing with my tech toys. But yeah, but I mean, Tracy's choice for her family to stay with the paper packets, um, that makes sense. And really, parents, like, your family, what works for your kids. As long as you know, I mean, honestly, your situation. If your kids just can't do school right now, just do what you can. But I encourage you to try to keep the learning going as a way to have continuity and to try to prepare for the future. And also, we don't know how long this is going to go on for. So, slight tangent here, but so far only KIP and IDEA have announced that the campuses are closed for the rest of the year. We're still waiting to hear, but I did notice recently in the Houston area that Fort Bend ISD announced that their campuses were closed for the rest of the year. So that's, as far as I know, the first major metropolitan ISD to, yeah, which makes me wonder, like, at some point, will there be some kind of announcement for San Antonio? And as a person who likes to plan, not knowing it's hard to not know. It's also hard. it's got to be hard on the seniors to not know, when they would be able to have graduation, right? Is it going to get pushed to July, August? Who knows? So if you know somebody with a high school senior or even an eighth grader or a fifth grader, that was in some kind of milestone year, just send them some love. If you can hug them, hug them. If you can't hug them, just you know call them, send them some love because this is not the senior year that they bargained for. Tracy says, okay, the two youngest are doing paper packets. High school is with her class. Okay, so um, yeah, that's one thing I noticed. Yeah, so okay, so I mentioned earlier, like synchronous versus asynchronous learning. Is that like my daughter has these Zoom calls where she can interact with her teachers, and her classmates are on the calls too, and it's at a certain time. But she also has asynchronous materials, so like she can download videos of like her music teacher, playing the piano and talking about a composer, or like her art teacher is at her table and let's see, the last lesson they did was about Henri Matisse, and so my daughter was watching the video and she had her scissors and her construction paper and she was, cutting out those organic shapes and laying them out on the paper. Um, let's see, she says, oh, Tracy says, Evan and I are using videos to reinforce concepts taught. There are some awesome videos to teach cell structures and phase cycles. Yeah, so that's I think parents are learning that there's a large variety of materials out there, and so depending on how your child learns, you can adapt. So if a book is better, if a video is better, find what works for them. And as since the theme of this episode is siblings, then think about not every sibling is going to relate to things the same way. So you may think you have it figured out for one sibling, and then you realize that another child, they just something else clicks for them. So yeah, I guess. So I'm trying to think of what else have people in the group commented about. I guess keeping siblings busy, kind of tag teaming it with different parents. I think that we do a lot of the learning time during the day because I'm able to work from home and I have a flexible schedule. I know some families, if parents have to be at work during the day, then the schoolwork happens in the evening, and I think so. That's why it's good that the schools have kind of cut down the number of hours of work that's expected, and it kind of varies depending on the grade that the kid is in. I would say if there's one thing to like cut last, or if you can do only one thing, I would say it's read with your kids. Either read to them, or you know make sure that they have time to read, or sit and read together, or like our family book club where we read a passage and then discuss it together. Because there's I feel like reading is the best of both worlds because you're building up all kinds of skills like vocabulary and spelling, but also reading comprehension and building up knowledge. But it's also family together time, and it's building up habits that will hopefully last even after this weird isolation period is over. Um, well, those are my thoughts about siblings. Kind of a grab bag of you know things from my own experience and things I'm learning from the parents in the discussion group. So if you haven't already, please join the San Antonio Charter Moms discussion group on Facebook, because we're trying to help each other and adapt and do our best and give back to the community during pandemic parenting, during quarantine schooling. So I'll be back online around 9 a.m. on Thursday, and I think we're going to revisit mental health in some way, but I haven't figured out exactly what. I'll probably ask in the group to see what people want to know about. But I think that keeping up our mental health, being aware of our states, and trying to help our children to feel as safe as possible is really important these times. So, Tracy has one more. Oh, she says, apologies for going off topic. For siblings, we take breaks from each other when needed. Two of them share a room. Yeah, yeah. It's we do need our space sometimes, and I definitely know that. It depends on how your house is laid out, but even going outside or even going in the car, just do what you got to do, right? Yeah, it's a lot of together time, which can be good, but sometimes we need breaks from each other too. So yeah. Okay. Well, Tracy, thank you so much for your comments and for making this talk richer today. And I'm going to message you offline and just find out more about how things are going for your kids. So, all right. So that is Charter Mom Chats for today, and I will be back tomorrow morning. Bye.